McGivern. I am an equestrian mental performance coach, and I'm here today to talk to you about positive and negative thinking and how that can impact our riding. So have you ever had an experience where you've really doubted yourself, where you're sort of felt overwhelmed by self-doubt, unsure of whether or not you and your horse were good enough to be competing at this level? Maybe you felt sort of worries around being judged by other people. If any of those experiences feel familiar, then you're in the right place, because in this video, we're going to talk about some strategies around understanding and managing that negative thinking so that we can let go of it and change our focus to the type of thinking and the types of beliefs that allow us to build a real foundation of self-trust and confidence, and that foundation is what allows us to feel more positive in our riding. So the real problem here is this belief that so many of us carry, this fearful belief that we are not good enough. I cannot tell you how common it is to hear this belief or this fear amongst riders. I hear it over and over again, across the hundreds and hundreds of riders that I've worked with. And it's an experience and a belief that I am familiar with myself. It's something that certainly haunted me in my early years as a rider. So what is good enough, and why are we so fearful of not being good enough? So being good enough or feeling good enough is essentially our sense of being worthy as human beings, and it's a really fundamental aspect of well-being. So if we don't feel worthy, it's very difficult to have confidence in ourselves, to trust in ourselves, and to make and meet the goals that are going to shape our lives for the best. The problem is that we tend to associate being good enough with outcomes or results. So we say, I'll know I'm good enough if I win this, or I'm riding at this level, or I don't fall off as much anymore, or I'm placing in the top 5 in all of my competitions. So we attach good enough to these specific outcomes. And when we do that, the standard good enough is like an ever-moving target that we're also always chasing and that we never really catch. And so we never allow ourselves then to feel good enough. And that really undermines our confidence and our self-trust, which has a really negative impact on our ability to be very present and effective as riders. It makes sense, right? If you have a core belief that you're not good enough, then why would you trust in your abilities? Why would you trust in your capacity to make good decisions? So those core beliefs really shape our reality. And the problem here is this core belief around not being good enough and needing to hit certain objectives or targets or get certain results in order to feel good enough. So the solution to this problem is that we have to redefine what good enough means. And it has to be redefined in terms of things that we have 100% control over. This is really, really important, because if we allow good enough to be defined by things outside of our control, such as specific results or placings in a show, or other people's opinions, which we definitely don't have any control over, then we basically allow good enough to be something that we don't have any control over, and therefore it's something we're always going to be chasing. So what do we have control over? Basically, it's a pretty short but important list. We control our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, behaviors, and reactions. And so we have to redefine good enough in terms of these things. So these are the things that I like to define good enough according to. Number 1, am I showing up and giving it my very best effort? And that means being present, managing my mind, managing myself, so that I can be fully there and really applying my full self to the ride, whether it's training or a competition. Number 2, am I managing my mistakes really, really well? And note that I didn't say that it's not about not making mistakes. It's about how we react and respond to the mistakes when they happen, to ensure that we are learning from them, not holding on to them too long, and simply using them as a lesson and moving forward. And lastly, am I having fun? Am I looking for the joy that exists in all these beautiful little moments when we're riding, where things come together? When we get a beautiful balanced distance, when we get a fabulous downward transition, when the horse has a moment of full relaxation and really stretches into the contact. Those are all moments that are full of joy if we open ourselves up to that joy and that happiness and the satisfaction that is there for us in those moments. So once we define good enough according to those three things, then we get to say, I am good enough. And I can continue to be good enough as long as I continue to show up, give this my best effort, manage my mistakes really well, and look for the fun and enjoy this process of growing and developing my skill as a rider and my partnership with my horse. So how do we implement this in a really practical way? So the first step is to really commit to this new definition of what good enough means, or what it means to be good enough. And it's important to note that it may not feel true right away, but it's important that we start the process of mentally committing to this new idea of what good enough means, or what it means to be good enough. And eventually the feeling will catch up to that and it'll start to feel true. So we mentally commit to it by reminding ourselves of it every single day. So a great way to do this is to write up a sentence or a little paragraph for yourself and put it up somewhere where you'll see it every day. A really good place is somewhere at the barn, like your tack locker, where you'll see it every day and also before you ride. And the sentence or paragraph should be something that reminds you of this shift in mindset towards deciding that you're in control of good enough. So an example might be, I don't need to chase good enough because I already am good enough. And what's important is just working on continuously refining and improving my skill as a rider. That's what I'm here to do, and I'm committed to enjoying that process as much as possible. Something like that, that really reminds you of this new focus. And then thirdly, we can support this shift by choosing self-compassion as often as possible instead of self-criticism. Almost all the riders I've worked with have a very loud inner critic, and that comes from being a bit of a perfectionist. And so that loud inner critic is always showing up and is ready to criticize us or be hard on us whenever things don't go according to plan. So when you notice that critical voice, see if you can pause and instead find a more compassionate and supportive way to speak to yourself, almost as if you were speaking to a friend. In this way, we can sort of become our own cheerleader instead of our own critic. And this really supports us to engage with this new definition of what it means to be good enough, to accept that we are good enough. And it's a really critical piece of implementing this in the long term. So one final tip. It's important that we don't confuse building self-belief with being arrogant. A lot of the clients that I work with, when they start to do work around developing their confidence, they can be a bit nervous that that could be misconstrued as arrogance, or they could start to seem like they're full of themselves. So it's actually not possible, because confidence and arrogance are two very different things. When we're arrogant, we're basically saying, I have nothing left to learn, I am perfect, nobody can teach me anything, I know it all. When we're confident, or when we believe in ourselves, we're saying, I don't know it all, and I have lots to learn from other people, but I believe in my ability to learn what it is that I want to learn, or what it is that I need to learn to move forward in the areas of my life that are important to me. So you see, they're very different things. And so don't let a fear of appearing arrogant hold you back from really developing confidence and belief in your worthiness, because that belief in your worthiness is so important to developing the trust and the confidence that we need to really show up for ourselves and our horses in the saddle. So in conclusion, that feeling of being good enough is not something we can ever get from an experience of achieving a certain result or from the opinion of others. It's something that we have to give to ourselves, and it's something that we can only get from ourselves. And it is that core belief that really fuels our experience of self-doubt or confidence. And when we can believe that we're good enough, we'll experience less self-doubt and be able to embrace and practice confidence more often. I hope that this has been useful, and I wish you all the best of luck implementing it. Take care.